Hello, welcome to what is going to be the start of whatever the hell this podcast is. I don't really. I have worked out a title actually, and that's going to be Talking Head Podcast, not the Talking Head. I like Talking Head Podcast. I think it's cleaner. This may be the first episode ever recorded, okay, or the first bit of audio ever recorded for it. So this is kind of interesting. This is me getting used to my mic, getting used to this kind of format. And by, hopefully when we reach, like, I don't know, episode 100, that might be ambitious, but we'll see. I might be a tiny bit better and a tiny bit more natural. But I would hope that I'm enough natural or natural enough, English please, to kind of carry this episode to a degree. Let me give a bit of backstory about what this podcast is and who I am. And maybe then you'll be able to kind of sink into this a bit easier. And then you'll never have to hear any of this bollocks ever again. Because I'm sure you probably don't care that much about what I am or who I am. You're here for what the podcast talks about, which is mental health awareness and the issues that surround mental health and the kind of situation we're in at the moment with mental health. There's a lot going on. We are still actually in a pandemic, but a lot of people think we actually are out of it. Things are getting eased, but the problem is we're now suffering kind of the blowback of the pandemic. We are now seeing job losses like we've never really seen before. And the nation has never really been more divided. And, how the world is now way more divided than it used to be. We thought this would unify us, but in some respects, it's actually done the opposite, which is slightly concerning. What we've got to do is be optimistic and realize that we are going to get out of all this. And we probably will become more unified than ever. It's just right now, we're not really there yet. And we've just got to acknowledge that, unfortunately. It'll be interesting to see how we all get out of this because at the moment, it's not going very well. So as things have been eased, a lot of people have realized that their mental health is still declining. You see, in lockdown, I've noticed a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I know have had their mental health kind of decline to a significant degree like they never have before. Isolation does a lot of things for you, and quarantine has supplied nothing but isolation. So there hasn't really been much escape. You couldn't really go anywhere. You couldn't see anyone. It's been a bit problematic. Now that lockdown is being eased, we've now got to more than ever address mental health and talk about it, because what else are we going to do? We're just going to sit back and let it happen and just acknowledge the fact that we've got a problem, but then not doing anything about it. That's not what I want to do. I'm making this podcast to try and help people and reassure people that, you're not alone and that you can speak to people. And, speaking is the best way forward. It just is. All right. I'm going to talk about myself now. Okay. I've had a pretty rough time in lockdown. I've come out of a breakup, which was pretty unhealthy. It was healthy to begin with, but then it turned sour. And I've just felt very mentally low about myself. I just haven't been in a great spot. And honestly, I was on a roll to begin with lockdown. And then all of a sudden, I'm now just kind of crawling to like a stop. And this podcast is sort of me, whilst addressing other people's mental health and, helping others, I'm doing this for my own mental sanity as well. So let's just bring in the format of this podcast, kind of wrap it all together before we start digesting into this week's topic. This is a weekly podcast where we're going to be talking about different things every week. Sometimes it may be a bit similar, but we'll try and make it as different to each other every single week so we can kind of get a bit of variety and basically keep people engaged. If you talk about something consecutively, you're just not going to retain an audience, and that's just how we work as humans. We kind of get bored very easily. So we have to be kind of conscious about what we have to say and when we do say it. So, yeah, I mean, we will obviously try and keep it as fresh as possible, and that'll be helped through different guests every single week. Yeah, different guests. That is going to be a bit of an issue sometimes because I don't actually know too many people. But I have reached out, and we've got a pretty solid lineup of people coming on the podcast. And I can't wait to have nice conversations with them and just kind of really have really nice and thoughtful conversations with them, which is what this podcast is all about. We're going to basically make sure that people can talk openly about their problems, and it's going to be very open conversation sort of vibe. It probably doesn't make sense from what I've said, and I understand that. But basically, this podcast is an open conversation with people dealing with different issues. So if you do get upset by hard-hitting issues, then maybe this isn't the podcast for you. But we will try refrain from too many personal details. This is going to be quite, like I said, an open podcast. We're going to talk about the issues at hand. And sometimes we will go into specifics. Sometimes we will talk about anecdotes and stuff like that. But we are going to try keep it general and make sure that people are getting what they need from this podcast. And I'm saying podcast a lot. I realize that, but I'm new to this, so I think I can be given a bit of a little shade of doubt, a little dab of doubt, if that's all right. And also, if any of you make it to the end of this podcast, I will be not just humbled, but surprised. And, I know that's not setting up the perfect example, but if you can, you deserve a fiver. And I'm not going to give you one because if I said that, I would just be paranoid that eventually one day someone actually would do that and I'd have to pay them a fiver. It's not the fact it's just a fiver because I have got a fiver, luckily, but I don't know how many fivers I would have in case a lot of people did it. I'm just being conscious about the fact that maybe one day this could get, I don't know, bloody more than 100 people watching. What's that? 5 times? That's £500. I don't have £500 to spare. Right? Okay, I'm going into uni. I don't have that kind of money. So that's a bit of a taster of my paranoia already. But this podcast isn't about paranoia. It's about something else. So now fast forward to a future version of me where I'm now recording with somebody else talking about today's topic. Hello and welcome to Talking Head podcast. I'm today going to be talking. You're laughing at me. It's muted, but he is laughing at me. Today I am joined by Gabe, who is going to be talking about toxic masculinity. If you're wondering why he was laughing, in the last take, I did just call the podcast Toxic Head instead of Talking Head. It wasn't really that funny, but if you were there, it was funny. So, yeah, but we're going to dive into toxic masculinity. So just a bit of an introduction as to who you are, Gabe. Just tell us a bit about yourself. Maybe give us about 2 sentences worth. Try and condense it down to 2 sentences. What can you give us?
A lot of pressure, mate. Hello, I'm Gabriel. I'm a young 20-something, no, I'm 21, lad from London. I live in Southeast, which is probably why I speak this way. I'm just a guy who works and now I know what it feels like. Honestly, Taylor, it's suddenly like I have no answers.
Yeah,
it's just trash. It's just trash.
Yeah. Well, just relax yourself, and we'll be fine. I mean, it's difficult.
I'm cool, man. I'm cool. I'm sitting in my room. I'm drinking my tea. I'm fine.
That's good. Tea's a good drink to drink to calm down.
Now, here's the deal. I am not a tea drinker. I'm a herbal tea boy.
Okay. So I like how you managed just to say tea instead of herbal tea, just to sound a bit...
well, to me, tea is just herbal. Like, whenever someone offers me tea, I think, yes, chamomile. Yes, please. Thank you. I'm a 21-year-old guy. I'm a mixed race, which is interesting. Most people think otherwise, but yeah. It's not about me. It's about this. It's about toxic masculinity. I'm a guy. I think that's the best way to say it. I'm just a man.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Just relating to the tea, did you mention just tea instead of herbal tea in case you thought people would assume that you're less masculine?
No, I just... Oh, shit.
Yeah, you see, you never know. You see, you've got to look into these things. That's what Talking Head is all about.
Maybe.
Right, so I'm going to ask you a few questions, or just ask you just a few things that potentially you might have an opinion about or something like that, and we'll just go from there.
Hmm.
But basically, I just want you to tell me about the first time that you heard the phrase toxic masculinity.
First time. Um, it was one of those kind of buzzwords that were used. Like, I think there was a kind of social justice warrior movement around 2015 that
Hmm.
just kind of hypes it all up. It's definitely something that's used by the feminist movement,
Mm.
um, which I don't disagree with. It exists. It's there. Um, but I would say the first time I kind of heard it was, you know, probably one of those stupid videos on YouTube where it's like a triggered feminist shouts at toxic masculine person.
Yeah,
Um,
I know the
you
type.
know,
Yeah.
it's one of those videos. And then I've heard it thrown around when I was at school. I've been out of school for a few years though, and you know, most of my friends. Yeah, it's just a general term. It's a loaded term, I think.
Mm.
Definitely a loaded one. I think it doesn't have more than. I think it has more than one meaning. Um, and because it's one of these terms that's like it's thrown together by a movement, it's the definitions usually aren't nailed down to a single thing.
No, I
Uh,
mean, I think a simple Google search will confirm what you're saying.
yeah,
There isn't a set definition really
yeah.
for toxic masculinity. I mean, I've literally just Googled it right now, and toxic masculinity, apparently, this is the first search that comes up on, and it's from Wikipedia, refers to traditional cultural masculine norms that can be harmful to men, women, and social society overall.
Mm.
Um, but it's not intended, apparently, to demonize men or male attributes, but rather to emphasize the harmful effects of conformity to certain traditional
Mm.
values. I think that I was going to say, but it says dot dot dot. Um, so
Yeah.
I want to know, obviously, relating to that, what does toxic masculinity really mean to you?
You know, it tends to link pretty heavily in with sexism to me, and the
Hmm.
idea that there's a certain expectation uh, of you depending on what genitalia you were born with, um,
Hmm.
and I think that's the main thing about it really. Toxic masculinity is the idea that I think it's the behavior that kind of reinforces the idea that, let's say, as a bloke, we have to be above a certain height, a certain body width span. I'm quite a big guy, but I'm not someone who is at all like into the gym.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
most exercise I do is probably a run every few days, and that's it. I am not someone who's interested in that. So that idea you would then ask, okay, am I less of a man because I haven't got a certain amount of body, or I don't think in a certain way? You know, it's
Yeah, definitely.
I would definitely think that I'm someone who cries on a regular basis. I think that's more healthy than just holding it in.
Mm.
Um, my dad's definitely someone who isn't that though. He bottles it in. And I think I kind of noticed that at a young age. So to me, I guess toxic masculinity it's the behavior that reinforces the idea that men have to be a certain way, such as strong, fit,
Mm.
uh, confident, etc. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you were talking about, not going to the gym. Um, and I don't want to go too much into body image because that is a different
Mm.
podcast that we are obviously going to go into and is
Oh,
coming
sweet.
soon. So that's a bit of a teaser, but I can definitely relate to what you mean by when you go to the gym
Mm.
and it's very easy to compare yourself to other people.
Totally. And
And
that's not to say that the gym's like, hell. Don't you can
no,
go
it's
there if
not.
you want. Go
Exactly.
there if you want to exercise, but it's the moment where you think, okay, if you're a man, then you have to. It's like,
Mm.
what? That doesn't quite work. As I ain't got time.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of
Honestly,
people that have uh, I go to the gym as a personality trait.
yeah, literally.
And that's it. And so then in lockdown, they've been struggling to go, oh God, what
Well,
am
they're
I?
not men, Taylor. Let's
Yeah,
be honest here. They're not men anymore. There's
yeah,
something in
they've
between.
lost it all. Um, and it's been interesting to see that really. But you were also mentioning about how a good cry, you're always gonna favor a good cry. I can relate to that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with that. And
It's,
I
it,
think if you can't let your emotions be shown, I mean, the majority of the time I'll cry, right? I won't do it in front of other people.
oh,
That's just
really?
something I do.
Oh,
I'm just, yeah, I get the majority of the times I cry is because I just feel alone. That,
oh,
and that's where it comes from. So a lot of the time it doesn't really be shown to anybody else. So
mm,
I'm not really that paranoid about showing it, but I'm not paranoid about talking about it really.
mm,
And I know a lot of people don't like talking about it because they think it makes them look quite feminine,
mm,
which is
totally.
I don't understand at all because what do
Well,
you
you know, it's,
categorize
it's, I
as
guess,
masculine or feminine?
I guess it sounds like it's maybe they think of it as a sign of weakness, you know? Maybe
Mm,
it is considered that, you know, showing that something has gotten to you. You'd rather be kind of an impervious wall of
mhm,
like manliness, but it rarely is that way. Um, Usually, I mean, I've always thought if a man doesn't cry in that minute, he's probably crying at night. Like,
yeah, yeah.
it, it, people don't, we're not very good at coping with things. You know, negative
Mm,
emotions get us down. That's why we feel them. It's quite human, actually. Just to, I mean, I'm one person who would, if I feel sad, I'll cry, just straight up. I'll just let it out because there's no point keeping it in and then, you know, not getting any help first of all, but then also just not being able to deal with it later on either. You know, when the emotion's fresh, then you can actually just like get it all out of your system. Um, you can feel it, and then you can move on. And then you can also ask for help, which I think is another thing that men don't do. The idea that
mhm.
you're meant to handle your own shit. Um,
Yeah.
Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
No, yeah, go ahead. It doesn't matter. Yeah,
Awesome, great,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. You
Handle
say
your own
whatever you
shit.
want.
Totally, totally
Own it.
handle your own stuff, and that's what a guy is. That's what a guy. That's what as we as men have been told to do. You know,
Yeah.
it's that kind of stiff upper lip British idea that like, oh well, you're just gonna have to deal with something, and you have to be really hardcore, absolute, and you know, don't even feel anything, just numb yourself.
Yeah.
I've only ever felt like that, I think, once in my life, and that was
Right.
probably around about the time that you know my parents split up. That was where you know when you go through so much emotional turmoil that you just can't feel anything anymore.
Yeah.
I think I don't know whether that's a normal thing, but that I think is the closest thing I've ever felt to like not being able to identify how I'm feeling. Um, and even then, I'm still working on that. I'm still working through that. Sometimes I have these moments where I'm just like, I don't feel anything. That doesn't make me less of a man or more of a man. It just
Mm,
means that I'm not doing well at that moment. And I
yeah.
think the irony is, I think you're a stronger, I'm using quotation marks, a stronger man if you can actually admit that you're not doing well. It takes so much more strength than just saying, "Oh yeah, mate, I'm fine. I swear, I'm fine."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So yeah,
Yeah. I totally agree. Um, you were talking about obviously, this breakup. How old were you when that happened?
I was 21. It happened at the start of this year, and it was
Jesus. Right. Okay. Right.
fucked.
So,
Um,
how's that
yeah,
process been for you?
better now. I was so
Yeah.
fucking angry. Tay, I was so fucking angry.
Yeah.
I wanted to punch my dad in the face and just scream like, "Get out, you fucking cocksucker! Get the fuck out of my house!" Like, I was so angry, and I won't go into the details of it because that's a
No,
bit more
of
private.
course. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it just got so vicious so
Mm,
quickly, and to the point where my dad was like, "Now here's the deal. Context. My dad is not British. He's Tunisian,
right.
which is a different culture. It's very
Mm,
much respect, shame, honor. That's how I've understood it. You do not talk bad to your parents. It's like
right.
that's rule one. So for me, seeing what was happening in my house and seeing how bad it was, I eventually snapped. I think we'd all been going through, January was a bit of a wacky month. Things have been going on for us, but I eventually snapped, and in a proper fit of rage, I confronted my dad, and just doing that was enough for him to say, forget about your inheritance, which was an awful feeling.
Mm,
And I think he said it in rage because I'm fine. We're fine. This is July, isn't it? So 6 months have passed now. So, and we're much better now. My parents are splitting up. I've told myself I'm not responsible for it because that's not me. But I think the first 3 months of that process were like, I am probably the worst human being. And this doesn't quite link to toxic masculinity, but I think the only way I can link it is that I didn't like the kind of man that my dad was acting like. And I think in my own rage, I didn't handle that properly. And as a result, I caused a massive argument to happen. An argument that needed to happen, but I shouldn't have done that. I think I could have just kept my mouth shut. But who knows? That's probably therapy later on down the line that I'll deal with later. But yeah, again, can you imagine quarantine hits and then suddenly, oh wait, my dad's just been kicked out of the house. What can we do?
It's
fucking wild.
It came at a weird time.
Kind of out of the blue.
This year has been a weird time for I think almost everybody in their own unique ways, and I think that's why it's important to talk to people. I mean, a lot of people have thought that they've had the worst time in lockdown, but then you can't. I don't think that's fair to say.
I don't think it's comparable, mate. Honestly,
it's not, because there's so many different levels to it. And for some people, something small will be something big, and something and it's just how you have been raised and how you have lived before and the kind of person you are.
And I suppose if we want to look at those people who really take pride in the fact that they are a man, those men, they've had so many things taken away from them, such as what does your typical bloke do? Goes to work, he's probably on furlough, goes to the pub, all pubs are closed, and still most pubs are empty. Every pub near me is like ghost town, so yeah, pretty depressing. Goes to the gym, all closed. Does sports with his mates. You can only meet up with one person at a time, and that was like the rule. That was a rule for the first few. Well, I don't think it even was a rule. Could you even meet anyone at the beginning of quarantine? I feel like it wasn't.
No, it's just your household. Yeah. Just your household.
Stay inside, mate, and that was it. So all the things that men kind of cling to in order to have some sort of identity. I'm hoping that there's been a massive growth period, because once you have those things taken away from you, you actually have to look at yourself. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Men look at themselves, don't quite find the answer yet, because that's such a long-winded thing to do. Men in their 50s don't quite know who they are. It takes a long time to work out your identity. So if you want to what you do is you naturally surround yourself with things that give you an identity. You're a football hooligan. You play football on the weekends. You go out drinking with your friends. You go to the gym on a regular. You listen to lots of music. You wear good clothes. You do these things that give you an identity, but they're not actually who you are. And then by the time that that's taken away from you, I don't know, maybe we're going to see a lot less toxic masculinity. Again, loaded term. What I mean is maybe we're going to see a lot more happier blokes.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, if lockdown's done anything to a lot of people, it's made them really have time to think about themselves and think about their own problems, because there's never been a time more in our lives where we've been isolated with our own thoughts. You can be in a really busy household, be in, hell, an orphanage where you're surrounded by people, but you're still alone. Do you know what I mean? You still kind of, a lot of people will still have spent more time in their bedrooms than ever before. And in that instance, you're most likely just alone. Yeah. So there's been a lot of people that have addressed their issues and now coming to terms with how to deal with them. And that's kind of the reason why I started this entire podcast, is because it now more than ever is a really important time to start talking about stuff like this. Because now more than ever, people are realizing the problems that they've kind of pushed aside. They've had reasons to kind of forget about them. They've been busy. Do you know what I mean? And now, people have had the time to address them. I think it's important to let people know that they're not alone. Just talking about, this kind of lad culture that we're calling, go to the pub, wear
Mm.
fancy designer clothes and stuff like that. I just want to get your opinion on how social media is having an influence on all that, because now more than ever we're growing up in a time where we're looking at our screens more than ever, and all we ever see is the best bits on social media. People having
That's the
fun,
thing, mate.
and no one's ever going to share themselves crying on their Snapchat
No,
story or anything like that.
no.
I mean, some people do, and that's fine, but the majority of the time, people are showing themselves smiling, having a laugh, and personally, I've never been the type to kind of say, "Oh, yeah, should we go to the pub?" I mean, I've literally only just turned 18 in February and stuff like that, but I know, fake IDs exist and stuff like
You're a
that.
young lad.
Yeah, exactly. But
You're a young man, mate. I say that I'm only 3 years older, but it's
yeah, so
it's
3 years is a long time,
so
though, isn't
much
it?
to learn.
Yeah, I know.
No, social media. Do you know what? I really cut it out.
Yeah,
I've tried my hardest over the last like few months just to not post anything and not look at anything. I have also failed at doing that. I've
yeah.
been on
I
it
think I
the
have as well.
most
Yeah.
I've ever been on it in my life. I
Yep.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
I got the notification of like how much screen time, and
Yeah.
I average out about 8.5 hours on my phone every day.
Right.
Um,
Jesus. Right.
I know it's bad, and the majority of that, I'd say about 5 hours of that is spent on Instagram,
Yeah.
which I'm ashamed of personally. I had so much faith, it's all
Yeah.
come crashing down.
It is difficult though. I can relate to the struggle. I mean, that's
Yeah,
definitely a podcast topic in itself, just social media, because there's so much
yeah.
to bloody go into there. But yeah,
I don't
it's
know, man.
difficult
If you
getting
want
that
to,
that time down.
I think it links a lot to body image as well.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure how much you want to go into it, but
we can go
it
into it if you want. Yeah.
it's very much like I always think of it as men being competitive, which men
Yeah.
tend to be.
Definitely.
Um, and it's very much whether it's posting about your progress, uh, posting that you're at the pub with your lads, posting that you've done some sort of home gym workout. I have this one guy, and to credit to him, I remember him. He went to school with me, and credit to him, he was a big lad.
Mhm.
He was large in the loving way. He was quite fat, and he's really changed his whole physical outlook, and how in his appearance in the last 5 years since I've seen him, and he looks incredible now. But he posts about his workout life every day. It's almost like, is that the only thing you do?
Mhm.
Um, and I don't dislike him for it, but I just think, like, do you not like have a day where you just don't work out when you eat ice cream, or do you have a day where, like, it's all about fronting it out,
Yeah, definitely.
showing
I
that
was.
you
Yeah.
it's what people get to see, what you show them versus what you actually are. So he probably is having an ice cream day, but it's not that he doesn't want, it's just that he doesn't want to show it. um,
Yeah.
I think social media has been such a deadness in the last few months, just because most of the things that people post are memories saying, "Oh, throwback," or "bring me back," or you know, or people like seeing each other, and I think that's so moist. It's like, "Oh, first meet up after lockdown." It's just like, all right, okay,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do
I
you,
get you.
mate. Can't even see my friends. Thank you, shielding.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Yeah,
It's pain.
I don't know if social media for me contributes, because the other thing is, you can choose who you follow through social media. You can choose who you do, like who you actually see. I don't follow any guys like that, straight up. In
Mhm.
fact, most of the I think one of the things about social media is that you you put yourself in this bubble where you're no longer exposed to anything that's not what you like, which is harmful in itself, because then then you forget that people don't have the same views as you, which is really polarizing.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like, anything that's not your view is like, that's sin, that's bad, we don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. I mean, obviously, relating to social media, I think there's a sort of, I don't think we really think about it, but I've kind of examined myself and I thought, why am I posting certain things?
Mm.
Like sometimes you post things and someone might look at that and go, well, why have you posted that? Like sometimes I mean, I used to take, this was ages ago and this is really cringy, but I think I used to take photos of, like, the classic where I don't know if you've experienced this, it might just be me, but you take pictures when you're on your story, and
Hmm.
you take pictures of like your shoes, or like, you'd be
Oh,
standing and you'd just take a picture of your shoes and you put the time, or you'd put where you are or something like that.
oh,
And you look at that, something like that, and he goes, who is gonna watch that? Who's gonna look at that and go,
but
oh yeah,
people,
that's
that shit
cool?
gets views, bro.
It
That shit
gets,
gets
but
views.
why? That's the thing. Like,
Why?
it's
That's
it's
the real
so
question.
bizarre. Like,
Why?
why is that? Why do I feel the need to do that? I actually found myself doing that this year. That's how
Mm.
embarrassing it is, and I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, what? There's something that's going on in my head to
That
think.
makes you think. Yeah, people want to see that.
Yeah, but I reckon it is. And I'm a single man now, so I reckon part of it is in my head, or at least from my experiences, sort of to appear attractive, and that sounds so
Mm.
weird from when I was talking about taking pictures of your feet. Um,
Hey,
but
mate. Some
do you know,
people don't
like, you
judge. Some people
post?
are into that.
I had shoes on, just to clarify.
I'm
Um,
glad to hear it.
but sometimes you post stuff, and I think it is just genuinely just to kind of up yourself up the social ladder. And I think for men, it's the things
Totally.
that we post is sort of conforms to
Mm.
your typical values of masculinity, which is totally old fashioned now, but it is what it is. Like, people, when they go to the gym, they would post pictures of themselves at the gym, and they have to do that every time that they go to the gym, just to tell people that
Mm.
they go to the gym. It's like, I don't know what the success rate for getting partners is with that technique, but I wouldn't imagine it's very high.
Well, okay. Well, I'll pose you this question, Taylor. Do you think? Do you have someone in mind who you're hoping you'll get the attention of when you post something
At the moment,
at the moment? Sure.
no, no,
No.
no.
I think it's very much attention. And if we're
Hmm.
talking about, you know, being a man and, looking for attention, it's what we think is going to bring in the most.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that kind of, what's the most like normal thing that you post on Instagram if you're a boy? You post your food, you post, I don't know, if you have a pet, um,
Hmm.
if you're going out drinking, if you're going to the gym, or if you're, watching a game of football or something, or like of a sport. Um, these to me, the thing is, I've never thought of that as at all attractive.
Yeah.
But then again, I also don't think I use my Instagram as a fishing rod.
No.
That being said, shameless plug at Curly Gabe 99.
Get
Thank
at it.
you.
Get
Get
at
at
it.
it. Follow me. I need the likes. That was that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we could move into the other part of toxic masculinity, which is, you know, our relationship with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Women,
Yes.
which is, complicated and usually stupid because we've messed it up in
Ridiculously
some
stupid.
way,
Yeah.
ridiculously stupid. And I can attest to that. I'm not smooth in
No.
any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And I've really put my foot in it. But I also like to think that I've never been that kind of person to say, what's a toxic male say? What does a toxic male say? Oh, you owe me this. Or I've never rated someone based on how they look, whether that's a guy or a girl. I think that's a
Mm.
really fucked up thing that people do sometimes.
Yeah.
It's weird. And I don't want to sound like I'm virtue signaling, but I think there's a certain behavior that we shouldn't really allow for.
Yeah.
I would say toxic masculinity definitely encompasses being a pervert and a creep, you know? Like that would
I
honestly,
definitely
like,
think that, yeah.
that's
It's
weird, man. Chill
it's
out.
so weird. I mean, I've been not long before lockdown. This is
Hmm.
just an example. I was at this indie night. So I'm from Leeds, so I was at this O2 indie night with actually somebody that's sat on my bed right now, but he's not
Yeah.
speaking. And we went there. It was quite good, quite good. But I do remember I was single at the time actually,
Okay.
and I wasn't really looking for it. But you when you're slightly intoxicated, you gain a bit of confidence. But I'm a
Uh-huh.
pussy anyway, so I didn't fucking do anything.
Oh,
I was dancing around, I was in this group that I didn't even know them, but you gain little mini friendships when you go on a night out, right? And there was this guy dancing with this girl, and I was just watching them, not being a pervert or anything. I was just intrigued, and he started dancing really, really, just
really sexually
inappropriately,
aggressively.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and he was,
Don't call
and
it
then,
inappropriate, mate, because that's the biggest turn off word ever. That's
well,
inappropriate. Stop it.
yeah, yeah, I know.
But yeah,
You've got to be
no, I
careful because you
understand what
don't
you
know
mean.
who's listening. But at the same time, and I just remember this guy just all of a sudden thinking he was top boss, and then just going in for the kiss, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like it
But
was
here's the
like,
other
but
thing.
he'd only been dancing it for like 20 seconds, and they just started making out for like a solid minute, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I
Some
was like,
people, man,
how do you have the balls for that? Like,
the balls. Well, here's the, you've actually said, not to put you on the pedestal here,
yeah,
but
go on,
you've said two terms
yeah,
which are part of this idea of what a perfect man is,
yeah,
which are the first one you said was you weren't a pussy.
yeah,
And not to tell you off, that's just the language we use. I don't think that's
yeah,
something
yeah,
that
yeah.
you
No,
should be
it's
you should
ingrained in
feel
our
bad
culture.
about. It's
Yeah,
part of it. And that's the idea that if you aren't brave, confident, etc., you are suddenly closer to what being a woman is, which
yeah,
is the idea is meek, shy, quiet, not outspoken. Because those are terms that we don't. Well, those are characteristics that men. I say we. I don't. That men don't like, and
mhm,
it's kind of like this weird. I guess it stems from an idea that we as men need to dominate, which is bullshit. Bullshit.
yeah.
I've never
Doesn't
met a
make any
marriage
sense.
like that. I've never met a relationship like that. It's a fantasy, I think.
Yeah,
But I'm sure there are people like that. And the other term you used was balls, and the
mhm,
idea that wow, this guy has the confidence, has the balls to be able to go up. Again,
yeah,
just saying
totally.
that using those terms in tandem almost makes them sound like they're the same thing.
Yeah,
And therefore, you wouldn't say, well, I mean, you do say, oh, that girl's got big balls, but it's always funny.
yeah,
That's strange. You don't say that about that bloke because, of course, he's got big balls. He's a man. He's already got testicles. They might as well be large if he's going up to this girl and snogging within like 20 minutes, the 20 seconds. You know. So I think it's that we the problem with toxic masculinity is that it's kind of everywhere. Um, that might change in 20 years. I don't know how boys are being brought up now, but when you go to school, when you're with your friends, when you're talking about stuff, certain images and certain things are always circulated around, and then these are internalized inside of us, and then suddenly we have an idea of what the perfect girl is, the perfect man is, and why we need to get to those two things.
mhm. Yeah, exactly.
It's hard, and it's really fucked because if it's in our subconscious, there's very little that we can do about it, other than watching ourselves make those errors and then catching ourselves. That's
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, if when I was saying that and I was explaining that story,
Mm,
you don't really realize what kind of terminology you're using until someone says, "Oh, you said this,"
yeah,
and I was like, "That just slipped out."
and then you catch yourself, and you're like, "Whoa, I didn't even mean that."
Yeah, and
It's hard.
it's very difficult. Yeah, and I think it's something that isn't going to change. in a snap of a finger. This podcast isn't going to cure toxic masculinity. I wish it did,
I'm not
but
going to give it that much credit, mate. I'm
no,
sorry.
it's
I
really
don't think
not.
anything is going to be that
No,
successful with my name
but
attached to it.
if it at least reassures people that it is an issue, and that
Of
if you
course.
do feel the effects of it, then you're not alone. People are feeling the effects of this all the time, all over the world. It's not a problem that's just relevant to certain areas. It's an international problem, and it's sometimes worse in different cultures, and that's it's going to be a long road. It's going to be a difficult one. But yeah, it's difficult. You were talking about certain things that you say, but you can say to women and stuff like that, and it just got me thinking. This is an example when you would say to someone when you get frustrated with them. I don't know if you've heard the term "suck my dick."
I mean, I don't say it to women when I'm frustrated. I usually,
No,
I usually
no.
ask it, but no, and it's a lot more polite. No, of course,
Yeah, no,
I understand it completely. It's
yeah.
just,
I mean, it's not really been something that I've said myself, unless
mate,
jokingly, but
yeah,
it's something that it's weird phrases that you feel like you can't say
it's
to
strange.
to
It's
people,
yeah,
especially like with that. It's like if I was saying that, and I wouldn't, but just to
no,
say I
I
would.
would cringe if I did.
Yeah, but yeah, for example, if I said that to you, you say you would cringe. If I said it to somebody else, they might think, "All right, mate, you're a bit, what's all that
Weird.
about?" And I'm
Okay,
like,
calm
it's
down.
obviously a joke, and it's
But they
like
don't know that.
toxic masculinity is in a way kind of made people lose any sort of sense of humor. And I'm not saying that is a funny joke, because it's not, but
Mm.
it's like you can't laugh at certain
Read the
things in
room when you
case.
say it. Just like don't say it to
Yeah,
people who it would piss off.
yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah, you've got
if
to
you're
be
with your
careful.
mates, the boys are in town. You're having a pissing contest. I'm all for someone. Barring like sexist and racist, anything that's like that goes deep into it. I don't really like the C word. I think it's extremely disgusting and derogatory.
Mm.
But I think people should be allowed to say stuff, um, but not obviously nothing awful. It's just we don't learn unless we make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got plenty of friends who'll say something about a girl or say something about being about trying to oomph themselves up, I guess. And I've called it out. I have, and I've no longer been friends with those people. I used to be in this little group where we would talk about some really horrendous shit, and this was like 16, 15, 14, those years. And that's
Those are
I
difficult
hate
years.
no, it's just like it's the idea that I don't like the phrase that boys will be boys. Kind of thing about that phrase is that boys will be boys in the sense that boys know very little and are very stupid and will say whatever they think. With some exception, that's a big generalization, of course, but I was one of those boys, and I definitely said some things that I would look back at now and kind of almost vomit.
Yeah.
But if I didn't say them back then, and I wasn't scolded by either my mum or another, typically a woman, which I think is interesting that older men I don't remember ever being called out on that behavior by older men. Definitely all the time by older women and girls. But I don't think I've ever been told off in that way by a male teacher. I'm just thinking about that now, and I'm finding that very interesting.
Mm.
Because then I guess that not being told off reinforces it. If it's reinforced, it becomes learned, and by the time it becomes learned, it's part of you, and therefore you just say whatever, and it's not cool. But I don't think going back to it, I used to be part of that group of friends, and I think the moment I stopped and distanced myself from them was when I was 16. I got my first proper girlfriend. I started my first proper relationship, and she heard some of the stuff that they said, and she was just like horrified by it. and I was head over heels for her. And I think when you're under enough pressure and you like a person that much, even, and you're far enough away from them to actually look from the outside in instead of the inside out, you realize how fucked some people's behavior is.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's
I mean,
really it's not difficult. Like they would do a regular thing. Here's a good story. They would do a regular thing where if a girl walked past, everyone would shout out a number between 1 and 10.
Jesus.
Everyone.
Jesus Christ.
Me too, me included. I would do it, and I am not proud of it. In fact, I'm very ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a normal thing.
Yeah.
And it would never. Here's the other thing that none of us boys knew what we liked anyway. There would never be higher or lower than a 7 or an 8. It's so fucking dumb. It's like, in a way, it's kind of equalizing. If we did it about men, it wouldn't be a problem, you know? But it was never rude. It was just always average. And it was just like, as boys, you know nothing. And I think because for a lot of boys, that behavior is never called out, they stay boys. They stay not knowing nothing. They don't learn. And I think that's probably, to round it up, I think, we say toxic masculinity is a loaded answer. There's lots of, loaded word. It's got lots of definitions and it's got lots of examples. These are all, I think, examples. But I think the main, if you wanted to boil it down to one simple thing, it's quite easy to recognize toxic masculinity because it never makes you feel positive if you're receiving it, Mm-hmm. But it's definitely, I would say, the expectation of what boys and men are meant to be mixed in with sexism. And that's plain and simple. That's it. Thinking that you are better or best based on what luck you had if you were born with a cock or a vagina, It's that simple, I think. It's just expectation mixed in with sexism.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think I could have put it better in my own words, really. And it's a really nice way to kind of wrap up this talk, really. I did have one final question just written down, just to kind of wrap it up, and it's something that has been covered 1,000 million times, but I would love to get your opinion on it. Should men hold the door open for women?
Every time. But you should also do it for men and your grandmother and your grandpa and your child and every other person under the sun. Has a guy ever held the door open for you, Taylor?
Oh, loads of times.
And they're legends. We love them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Respect.
You're not good. I don't understand why you would complain about anybody doing that.
If a girl does it, I'm like, marry her immediately. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Goals.
I mean, that's class. That's a keeper kind of move.
It's just politeness. We shouldn't be confused. I don't think, yes, there's the idea that obviously, a man must hold the door open, pay for the first date, do this, do that. There's responsibilities. Fuck them. Who gives a shit? If you want to hold the door open for someone, do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do a nice thing without it being loaded.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be...
You can do a nice thing without expecting anything in return,
Exactly.
So 100%. Be a nice person. Cool. I'm all about that. Positivity 101.
Good vibes.
Don't be a cunt. Oh, I said the word.
Oh, you said the word. You said you didn't want to say.
Don't worry. Listen, I'm going to pray. The other thing is I'm a Christian, guys, and I'm going to go pray for forgiveness.
Good job. That's what I want to hear.
Thanks, mate. Thanks.
Right. Mate. That's a nice place to end it.
Love it.
Right.
I've
okay.
got dinner to eat.
Oh, what are you having?
Oh, I think it's like a vegetable pasta sauce. I don't even care. My mum's.
Have you made it yourself or?
No, of course I haven't. My mum's done it because I'm lazy. I'm a lazy git. I've seen you cooking. I mean,
it seems pretty good.
I am chef.
I'm looking forward to that at uni, to be honest.
Yeah, if you're lucky. I'll
pay you. Don't worry. I'll pay you.
Don't worry. Oh, do you think I could do that? £5 at the door. That'd be
like Deliveroo? Just want to get your Deliveroo jacket. That'd be good.
Get your Deliveroo jacket.
Right. Okay. That's the that's the end of the session today. If you did enjoy,
love it.
That's the end of the Toxic Heads. That's the end of this
Toxic heads.
session of Toxic Heads.
Heads.
If you did enjoy, please do share, and any share would be appreciated. Just spread the word, and we can hopefully get a few more people talking. So yeah. But yeah, that's been the end of this talk. Oh, I almost said it. Talking Head podcast. You can tell I'm new to this. And yeah, I'd love to see you again sometime soon. So thank you for listening, and goodbye.